The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched for hundreds of meters in every direction. Crystalline walls caught the light from three different suns, casting rainbow patterns across the assembled delegates. Representatives from 47 species sat in their designated sections, their forms as varied as the stars themselves. At the center platform stood Ambassador Torvik, his body made entirely of living crystal that glowed with a soft, blue light. His people, the Corinthians, had been part of the council for over 3,000 years. They were known throughout the galaxy for their unbreakable bodies and their careful judgment. When Torvik spoke, his voice resonated like wind chimes in a storm. "Honored members of the council," he began, "we gather today to discuss the application of a new species. They call themselves humans. They come from a world they name Earth, located in the outer spiral arm of the galaxy." A holographic display flickered to life above the assembly. Images of humans appeared, rotating slowly so all could see. The delegates leaned forward, studying the strange creatures. "As you can observe," Torvik continued, "these beings possess no natural defenses. Their outer covering tears with minimal pressure. Their internal support structures, which they call bones, fracture under stress that our own bodies would not even register. They have no shells, no scales, no crystalline armor. They bleed from the smallest cuts." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. High Arbiter Zelniks of the Vryn Collective, whose distributed consciousness occupied 17 floating spheres, pulsed with amber light. "This is the species that successfully achieved faster-than-light travel? They appear absurdly vulnerable." "Indeed," Torvik agreed. "Our analysis indicates that humans are among the most fragile, intelligent species ever encountered. A fall from standing height can break their bones. Their skin provides almost no protection against environmental hazards. They require constant temperature regulation and die within minutes without their specific atmospheric mixture." Commander Vraxis of the Kelthar leaned back in his seat, his 6 arms crossed over his armored chest. His species were warriors, evolved on a high-gravity world where only the strong survived. How did such weak creatures even survive long enough to develop space travel? "That remains unclear," Torvik admitted. "However, the fact stands that they are here, and they have formally requested council membership. We must decide how to proceed." The debate began in earnest. The Pelgrathi, who lived in the deep oceans of their world, questioned how humans could possibly contribute to council operations. The Thoraxians, silicon-based beings who thrived in extreme heat, wondered if humans would require special accommodations everywhere they went. The discussion continued for hours. Finally, Torvik called for order. "Given the evidence before us, I propose we grant humans provisional membership as a protectorate species. They will have council representation, but will operate under the supervision and protection of more durable species. All in favor?" The vote was unanimous. Humans would join the council, but as the weakest members ever admitted. "Very well," Torvik announced. "The human delegation is scheduled to arrive tomorrow. Let us prepare to welcome them, carefully, to our community." The next day, the human vessel appeared in the station's approach vector. The ship was called the Perseverance, a name the translator systems rendered with appropriate meaning. It was smaller than most council ships, built with simple metals and basic shielding. Nothing about it suggested any particular advancement or strength. The docking procedures took an hour. Finally, the airlock opened, and the human delegation walked into the council station. Captain Elena Vasquez led her crew of 12 through the corridors. She was a woman of average height by human standards, with dark hair pulled back in a practical style. Her uniform was simple blue and white, with patches indicating her rank and mission. Behind her walked various crew members, including engineers, scientists, and diplomatic staff. Torvik met them at the central junction, where hundreds of aliens had gathered to observe the fragile newcomers. He approached slowly, careful not to make any sudden movements that might startle them. "Welcome to Council Station Prime," he said, his crystalline body chiming with each word. We are honored to receive you. Captain Vasquez extended her hand, a human gesture she'd explained in advance. Torvik carefully touched her hand with one crystalline appendage, marveling at how soft and yielding her skin felt. Like touching water, he thought, so delicate. Thank you for accepting our application, Vasquez replied. We're eager to join the galactic community and contribute however we can. Of course, Torvik said, though I must inform you, the Council has designated humanity as a protectorate species. This means— We know what it means, Vasquez interrupted gently. We read the documentation. You think we're too fragile to operate independently. Torvik's glow dimmed slightly, embarrassed. The Council's decision is based purely on biological assessment. No offense is intended. None taken, Vasquez said with a slight smile. We understand. Actions speak louder than words, as we say on Earth. You'll learn more about us with time. The welcoming ceremony began. The human delegation was shown to their assigned quarters, given station access codes, and introduced to various council members. Everything proceeded smoothly until the evening reception. The reception hall was located near the station's outer ring, where the view of space was most spectacular. Hundreds of delegates mingled, sharing food and drink compatible with their various biologies. The humans stayed together, mostly, overwhelmed by the diversity of life surrounding them. David Chen, one of the human engineers, stood near a viewing window, staring at the stars. He was young, barely 30 years old, with an enthusiastic energy about him. This was his first deep space assignment, and he couldn't stop smiling. It's beautiful, isn't it? Asked one of the Pelgrothi delegates, floating in a containment suit filled with water. Beyond words, Chen agreed. I've dreamed of this moment since I was a child. Above them, a maintenance platform was being moved into position. The station was old, built over centuries, and constant repairs were necessary. Several crew members worked on the platform, adjusting structural supports for an upcoming expansion project. No one noticed the stress fracture in the support beam. It had been forming for weeks, invisible to standard scans because of the beam's composite material. The fracture had finally reached critical mass. The beam snapped with a sound like thunder. Everything happened in seconds. The massive piece of metal, weighing several tons, fell directly toward the crowd below. Aliens scattered in all directions, moving with the reflexes of species that had evolved to survive. Chen looked up at the sound. He saw the beam falling. He tried to move, but he wasn't fast enough. The beam struck him directly, crushing him to the floor. Blood sprayed across the polished surface. His left leg bent at an impossible angle. His arm twisted beneath the metal. Broken bones protruded through torn skin. The hall fell silent. Everyone stared at the catastrophe. Torvik rushed forward, his crystalline body flickering with horror. "Emergency medical team," he shouted. "Immediately!" But even as he called for help, he knew it was too late. No being could survive such damage. The human was dead, or would be within moments. Torvik felt a wave of guilt wash over him. They had invited these fragile creatures into the galaxy, and now one had died on his watch. Dr. Sarah Okonkwo appeared from the crowd, running toward the fallen beam. She was the human medical officer, a calm woman with steady hands and quick eyes. "Help me lift this," she ordered, her voice sharp and clear. Several strong aliens moved to help, carefully raising the beam. Chen lay beneath it, his body broken and bleeding. Torvik turned away, unable to watch the death. But Dr. Okonkwo didn't hesitate. She knelt beside Chen, checking his pulse at his neck. "He's alive," she announced. "Pulse is weak but steady. Pupils reactive. Get a medical stretcher here now." Torvik turned back, shocked. "Alive? But surely that damage—" "Is severe," Okonkwo agreed, already applying pressure to stop the bleeding. "But treatable. Chen, can you hear me? Stay with me. You're going to be fine." Chen's eyes opened slightly. He tried to speak, coughed blood, then whispered, "That really hurt." "I know," Okonkwo said soothingly. We'll get you fixed up. You're going to be okay. The alien observers watched in confusion as the medical team arrived with a stretcher. They carefully moved Chen onto it, stabilizing his neck and limbs. Okonkwo barked orders, professional and efficient. Prep the surgical bay, she said. We'll need bone reconstruction, vascular repair, and full tissue assessment. Get the blood synthesizer ready. He's going to need at least 3 units. As they carried Chen away, Torvik followed in a daze. The humans should be dead. The damage was catastrophic. Yet the medical officer spoke of treatment, of repair, as if this were routine. Doctor, Torvik said, catching up to her, I must observe, for the official record, your crew member, he cannot possibly. He'll make a full recovery, Okonkwo said firmly. Probably be back on duty in 6 to 8 weeks. Torvik's crystalline structure flickered rapidly, the equivalent of a human's jaw dropping open. Weeks? For that level of trauma? Surely you mean he will survive, but remain permanently damaged? Dr. Okonkwo paused at the medical bay entrance and looked at the ambassador. Her expression was patient, almost sympathetic. Ambassador, she said quietly, I think there's a lot you don't understand about humans yet. Torvik stood outside the human medical bay, his crystalline form reflecting the sterile lights of the corridor. He had never felt so uncertain in his 300 years of life. Behind the sealed doors, the injured human lay on a surgical table, and Torvik had insisted on documenting everything for the council record. You understand this may be disturbing, Dr. Okonkwo had warned him before they began. Our procedures might seem extreme to other species. I have witnessed many things, Torvik replied with confidence he didn't entirely feel. I will observe professionally. That had been 6 hours ago. Now, as he stood in the observation gallery with a dozen other alien medical specialists, Torvik questioned everything he thought he knew about biology. Dr. Okonkwo worked with 3 other human medical personnel in the surgical bay. Chen lay unconscious on the table, his chest rising and falling with steady breaths, despite the terrible damage to his body. Machines surrounded him, displaying numbers and graphs that the alien observers didn't fully understand. First, we need to stabilize the internal bleeding, Okonkwo explained, knowing the aliens were watching through the transparent barrier. She spoke as if giving a lecture, calm and methodical. Humans have approximately 5 liters of blood in our bodies. Chen has lost about 1.5 liters, which is significant but not immediately fatal. A Pelgrothi medical specialist in the observation gallery made a whistling sound of disbelief. 1/3 of his blood volume gone? How is his consciousness still functioning? Our cardiovascular system compensates, Okonkwo answered, working as she talked. Heart rate increases, blood vessels constrict, and blood flow prioritizes vital organs. It's an automatic response. She made an incision to access the damaged blood vessels. Torvik watched as she carefully repaired torn arteries with tiny stitches, each movement precise and confident. The human body will begin producing replacement blood cells immediately, she continued. Within a few weeks, he'll have fully replaced the lost blood volume. Replaced? Whispered a Thoraxian observer. You can manufacture blood? Our bone marrow does it constantly, Okonkwo replied. Every second of every day, whether we're injured or not, injury just accelerates the process. Next came the bones. Chen's left leg had compound fractures in 2 places. Broken bone protruded through the skin, white and terrible against the red of blood and torn flesh. The alien observers had seen enough injuries to know this meant permanent damage. Bones didn't heal. They either held together or they didn't. Dr. Okonkwo carefully cleaned the wounds, removing debris and damaged tissue. Then she did something that made Torvik's entire form flicker with shock. She pushed the broken bones back into alignment, fitting the pieces together like a puzzle. What are you doing? Torvik asked through the communication system. Setting the bones, Okonkwo explained patiently. Once they're properly aligned, Chen's body will heal them naturally. Naturally? High Arbiter Zelnix's voice came through from the council chambers, where she was watching the feed. Explain this impossibility. Okonkwo pulled up a holographic display showing the cellular structure of human bone. Bones are living tissue, she said. When they break, specialized cells called osteoblasts begin building new bone material. Over several weeks, the break will fill in and solidify. Eventually, the bone will be as strong as it was before the injury, sometimes stronger. The observation gallery erupted in discussion. Several species present had rigid skeletal structures that never healed from breaks. Others had flexible cartilage that could bend but never truly regenerated. The concept of bones that could break and then repair themselves seemed like fantasy. Silence, please, Torvik requested. He needed to understand this. Doctor, are you claiming that this human will walk normally again? Yes, Okonkwo said simply. In about 8 weeks, maybe 10. He'll need physical therapy to rebuild muscle strength, but the bones will heal completely. She moved to Chen's arm, where the damage was even more severe. The joint had been crushed, and several bones in the hand were broken. Okonkwo worked carefully, reconstructing the damage piece by piece. She inserted small metal pins to hold everything in place while healing occurred. The pins are temporary, she explained. As the bones heal, they'll incorporate around the metal. Eventually, we can remove the pins or leave them in if they don't cause problems. The body will adapt either way. For hours, the surgery continued. Okonkwo repaired torn muscles, stitched damaged skin, and cleaned each wound with meticulous care. She explained every step, describing how human tissue would respond, how the immune system would fight infection, how new skin would grow to cover the injuries. The alien observers listened in growing amazement. This wasn't medicine as they knew it. This was something else entirely. The humans weren't trying to preserve damaged tissue or replace it with artificial materials. They were preparing the body to heal itself. Finally, after 8 hours of work, Dr. Okonkwo stepped back from the table. That's everything I can do surgically, she said, exhaustion evident in her voice. Now we wait and let his body do the rest. The rest? Torvik asked. What remains to be done? Healing, Okonkwo said. His body will work continuously to repair the damage. New blood vessels will grow into the injured areas. Inflammation will clear away dead cells. New tissue will form. It's a complex process involving millions of cells working together. Chen was moved to a recovery room, still unconscious from the anesthesia. Monitoring equipment surrounded him, tracking his vital signs. Dr. Okonkwo finally allowed herself to rest, accepting a cup of coffee from one of her colleagues. Torvik approached her cautiously. Doctor, I must confess my confusion. In my species, such damage would result in permanent crystalline fractures. The injured limbs would remain weakened forever, if they didn't simply shatter completely. Yet you speak of complete recovery. Okonkwo nodded, taking a sip of her coffee. Ambassador, our species evolved very differently. The Corinthians developed durable bodies because that's what your environment required. Humans developed the ability to repair because that's what Earth required. Earth must be a terrible place, Torvik said quietly. It can be, Okonkwo admitted, but it's also beautiful. The same world that breaks us also gave us the ability to heal. Over the next 48 hours, the alien observers maintained a constant presence. They took turns watching Chen, recording every change, every measurement. What they witnessed defied their understanding of biology. Chen's body temperature rose slightly, hovering at what the humans called a fever. Dr. Okonkwo explained this was the immune system working, fighting any potential infection and accelerating cellular repair. The aliens marveled at a body that could deliberately increase its own temperature as a healing strategy. The swelling around the injuries was dramatic, making the damaged areas appear worse. But Okonkwo assured them this was normal, part of the inflammatory response. Fluid accumulated to protect the damaged tissue and bring in repair cells. On the second day, Chen woke up. Torvik was present when his eyes opened, along with several other alien observers. They had expected confusion, pain, maybe delirium. What they got was something entirely different. "Hey, Doc," Chen said, his voice rough but clear. "Did I survive?" Dr. Okonkwo smiled, checking his monitors. "You survived. How do you feel?" "Like a building fell on me," Chen replied, attempting a weak smile. Then he noticed the crowd of aliens staring at him through the observation window. "Oh, hi everyone. Sorry for the drama." Torvik pressed closer to the glass, his crystalline form pulsing with confusion. "You are conscious? You can speak coherently?" "Yeah," Chen said, trying to sit up before Okonkwo gently pushed him back down. "Though, Doc, can I have some water? My mouth tastes like I licked a battery." "That's the anesthesia," Okonkwo said, helping him drink through a straw. "And no sitting up yet. You need to stay still while the bones heal." High Arbiter Zelnick's voice came through the speakers. "This is impossible. The damage we observed should have resulted in death or permanent incapacitation. Yet he speaks, he thinks clearly, he even makes jokes." Chen looked toward the speaker, confused. "I mean, it was a bad accident, but people survive worse on Earth all the time. There was this guy in my academy class who fell off a cliff during a hiking trip. Broke both legs, his pelvis, and a bunch of ribs. He was back to full duty in 6 months." The observation gallery fell silent. Several aliens quietly left, unable to process what they were hearing. Over the following days, Chen's recovery continued to astound the observers. On day 3, the swelling began to decrease. On day 4, the bruising started changing colors as his body broke down and reabsorbed the leaked blood. On day 5, he was eating solid food and complaining about being bored. "Bored?" Commander Vraxis asked during a visit. The Kelthar warrior looked at Chen with newfound respect. "You nearly died less than a week ago." "Yeah, but I'm getting better now," Chen said, using a tablet to read messages from his crewmates. "Doc says I can start physical therapy soon. Can't wait to get out of this bed." By the end of the first week, Chen was sitting up without assistance. His vital signs had stabilized. The incisions were beginning to close, new skin growing to seal the wounds. He could move his fingers on his injured hand, though it caused him pain. "The pain is actually good," Dr. Okonkwo explained to the ever-present alien observers. "It means his nerve endings are reconnecting, sending signals to his brain. Pain tells him what movements to avoid while healing continues." Torvik had spent nearly every day in the observation gallery, documenting everything. Now he requested a private meeting with Captain Vasquez and Dr. Okonkwo. They met in a small conference room, just the 3 of them. "Captain, Doctor," Torvik began, his glow dimmer than usual. "I must apologize. The Council classified your species as fragile, based on our observations of your physical structure. We assumed that because you could be easily damaged, you were weak." "It's an understandable assumption," Vasquez said diplomatically. "But it was wrong," Torvik continued. "Chen should be dead. In any other species I know, those injuries would have been fatal. Yet he lives. He heals. He makes jokes about his recovery. I do not understand how this is possible." Dr. Okonkwo pulled up a holographic display showing human evolution. "Ambassador, let me tell you about Earth." She showed him images of Earth's varied environments. Frozen tundras, burning deserts, dense jungles, deep oceans. She showed him predators with claws and teeth. She showed him viruses and bacteria, invisible but deadly. She showed him natural disasters, earthquakes and floods and storms. "Humans evolved in a world that constantly tried to kill us," Okonkwo explained. "We didn't develop thick skin or hard shells because we needed to remain flexible, to adapt to different environments. We didn't develop claws or venom because we learned to make tools instead. But we absolutely had to develop the ability to survive injury because injury was inevitable. A death world, Torvik whispered. You come from a death world. We just call it home, Vasquez said with a slight smile. But yes, compared to most council worlds, Earth is extraordinarily hostile. And that hostility shaped everything about us, including our ability to heal. Torvik was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. Finally, he spoke. The council must know about this, all of it. We need to reconvene and reconsider our assessment of humanity. We'd appreciate that, Vasquez agreed. Though I hope you'll wait until Chen is further along in his recovery. It would be more impressive to show them him walking. Walking? Torvik's crystalline form flickered. You truly believe he will walk again? Dr. Okonkwo smiled. Ambassador, he'll do more than walk. Given enough time, he'll run. 3 weeks after the accident, the Galactic Council reconvened in emergency session. The Great Hall was packed with representatives from every member species, and thousands more watched via holographic feeds across the galaxy. The topic was simple, but unprecedented. Humanity's classification needed to be reviewed. Ambassador Torvik stood at the central platform once again, but this time his demeanor was completely different. His crystalline body glowed with an intensity that suggested excitement, or perhaps anxiety. Honored members, he began, I have spent the past weeks observing something that challenges everything we understand about biological limitations. I have witnessed what humans call healing, and I must tell you, it is unlike anything in our medical databases. The holographic displays activated, showing footage from Chen's recovery. The council watched in silence as the videos played, showing the progression from catastrophic injury to steady improvement. This human was struck by a support beam weighing approximately 3 tons, Torvik explained. He sustained multiple compound fractures, severe tissue damage, and significant blood loss. By all reasonable medical assessment, he should have died within minutes. The footage showed Chen in the medical bay, broken and bleeding. Several council members looked away from the gruesome images. Instead, Torvik continued, he is currently in physical therapy, relearning to walk on legs that were shattered. His doctors expect full recovery within another month. High Arbiter Zelnix's 17 spheres pulsed with amber skepticism. Ambassador Torvik, are you certain this footage hasn't been altered? Such recovery seems biologically impossible. I personally verified every recording, Torvik replied. Additionally, I have invited Dr. Sarah Okonkwo, the human medical officer, to present her findings to this council. If you will permit? The council agreed, and Dr. Okonkwo walked to the platform. She moved with the calm confidence of someone who had spent weeks explaining human biology to confused aliens. She carried a data pad and wore her medical uniform, the universal symbol of her profession visible on her shoulder. Thank you for this opportunity, she began. I understand that human regenerative capabilities seem impossible to many of you. That's because most spacefaring species evolved on worlds very different from Earth. Let me explain the science behind what you've witnessed. Her holographic display showed a simplified diagram of a human cell. All complex life is made of cells, but human cells have some unique properties. They can divide and create copies of themselves through a process called mitosis. When tissue is damaged, the cells around the injury receive chemical signals telling them to start dividing rapidly. She showed an animation of cells multiplying, filling in a wound. The alien observers watched with fascination. For bones specifically, Okonkwo continued, we have specialized cells called osteoblasts that build new bone material, and osteoclasts that remove damaged bone. When a break occurs, these cells work together to bridge the gap and reconstruct the structure. It takes weeks, but the result is bone as strong as the original, sometimes stronger because the body overcompensates. A Thoraxian scientist raised a crystalline appendage. Doctor, this cellular division you describe, does it not carry a risk of uncontrolled growth? What you call Cancer? Yes, Okonkwo admitted. Cancer is a risk for humans. Our cells can divide so many times that sometimes the control mechanisms fail. But we evolved strong immune systems partly to address that issue. Our bodies constantly scan for abnormal cells and destroy them before they become problems. She pulled up another display showing the human circulatory system. When Chen lost blood, his bone marrow immediately began producing new red blood cells. Within days, he'd started replacing the lost volume. Within weeks, he'll have completely restored his blood supply. This happens automatically, without conscious thought. Commander Vraxis leaned forward in his seat. Doctor, I have a question from a tactical perspective. This healing ability, it applies to all humans? All healthy humans, yes, Okonkwo confirmed. The speed of healing varies based on age, nutrition, and overall health. But the fundamental ability exists in every member of our species. Then in a combat scenario, Vraxis continued slowly, a wounded human soldier could potentially return to duty after injuries that would permanently disable other species? That's correct, Okonkwo said. Though we obviously try to avoid combat injuries when possible, pain is still pain, and healing takes time and resources. The council chamber filled with murmuring. Several military advisors began speaking urgently with their representatives. Dr. Okonkwo continued her presentation, showing more data about human healing. She explained the immune system, how it fought infections and cleared damaged tissue. She described the inflammatory response, the formation of scar tissue, the remodeling of wounds over months and years. But healing isn't just physical, she added. Humans also have remarkable psychological resilience. We can experience severe trauma and with time and support, recover mentally as well as physically. We call it post-traumatic growth. Some people emerge from terrible experiences stronger than before. A Pelgrathi philosopher made a bubbling sound of disbelief. You are describing a species designed for survival under impossible conditions. Not designed, Okonkwo corrected gently, evolved. Every trait I've described developed because our ancestors needed it to survive on Earth. The individuals who could heal from injuries lived long enough to have children. The ones who couldn't, didn't. Over millions of years, this shaped who we became. She paused, looking around at the assembled aliens. I know this seems extreme to you, but from our perspective, we're simply normal. We break, we heal, we continue. It's just what humans do. Torvik stepped forward again. The Council requested this demonstration because we need to reconsider humanity's classification. The evidence clearly shows that while humans are physically vulnerable to injury, they are not weak. In fact, their ability to recover from damage may make them more durable in practical terms than species with harder bodies but no healing capacity. High Arbiter Zelnix's spheres flickered through several colors, indicating deep thought. This presents a philosophical problem. We classify species based on their physical resilience, but humans separate the concept of damage from the concept of defeat. They can be damaged extensively, yet remain functional and recover fully. How do we categorize this? Perhaps, suggested a Vryn philosopher, we have been measuring the wrong thing. We measured resistance to damage when we should have measured capacity for continuation. The debate began in earnest. Different species offered different perspectives, shaped by their own evolutionary histories. The Corinthians, who never healed from cracks in their crystalline structure, were particularly disturbed by the concept. The Kelthar warriors were intensely interested in the tactical implications. The Pelgrathi philosophers wanted to understand the psychological aspects. Captain Vasquez had been sitting quietly in the human delegation section, but now she requested permission to speak. The council granted it, curious to hear from the human commander. Honored council members, Vasquez began, I appreciate your thorough analysis of human biology, but I think you're missing something important. We didn't come here to impress you with our healing abilities. We came because we want to contribute to the galactic community. She gestured to where Chen sat in the gallery. his injured leg elevated, but a smile on his face. Chen didn't choose to get hurt. It was an accident. But his recovery isn't special. It's just normal for us. Every human you meet has healed from dozens or hundreds of injuries over their lifetime. Cuts, bruises, broken bones, illnesses. We heal and we move forward. What Earth taught us, Vasquez continued, isn't just that we can survive damage. It taught us persistence. It taught us that setbacks are temporary. It taught us to get up when we fall down. She pulled up images of Earth, showing its beauty alongside its dangers. Yes, our world is harsh, but it's also magnificent. We learn to thrive there not by being invulnerable, but by being adaptable. Not by avoiding all harm, but by recovering from it. An elderly Vryn diplomat spoke up, her spheres dimming with age. Captain, I have lived for 400 of your years. In that time, I have seen many species join this council. All of them demonstrated either technological superiority or physical capabilities that filled a niche. What niche do humans fill? Vasquez smiled. We're the species that doesn't give up. We're the ones who can go places other species can't, survive conditions that would kill others, and keep working after everyone else has been forced to stop. We're not the strongest or the fastest or the smartest, but we're persistent. She looked around the chamber, making eye contact with various delegates. Earth has frozen tundras where temperatures drop to -50 degrees. Humans live there. It has deserts where no rain falls for years. Humans live there. It has mountains so high the air is too thin to breathe easily. Humans climb them for recreation. Our planet tried to kill us in every way possible, Vasquez said quietly, and we survived anyway. We thrived. We built civilizations. We reached for the stars. Not because we were unbreakable, but because being broken wasn't enough to stop us. The council chamber fell silent. Even the skeptics seemed moved by her words. Finally, High Arbiter Zelnick spoke. The council must vote on humanity's classification. But first, I propose we conduct one more demonstration. Captain Vasquez, would you permit one of your crew to sustain a minor injury under controlled conditions so we can observe the healing process from the beginning? Vasquez looked uncomfortable. You want us to deliberately hurt someone? A small cut only, Zelnick clarified, with full medical oversight and the individual's consent. The council must see this healing process to truly understand it. The footage we've seen could still be questioned, but a live demonstration, observed by scientists from multiple species, would provide indisputable evidence. Vasquez looked at Dr. Okonkwo, who nodded slightly. If we have a volunteer, Vasquez said carefully, and if appropriate safety measures are in place, we can agree to this. I'll do it, said a voice from the human delegation section. Lieutenant James Park stood up, a young navigation officer with a calm demeanor. If it helps the council understand us better, I'm willing to participate. Over the next hour, strict protocols were established. A medical ethics committee was formed, representing 6 different species. The procedure would be simple. A small incision on Park's forearm, approximately 3 centimeters long, deep enough to require healing, but shallow enough to be safe. The wound would be monitored continuously for 2 weeks, with tissue samples taken at regular intervals. The demonstration was scheduled for the following day, giving time for all parties to prepare. As the council session ended, delegates gathered in small groups, discussing what they had learned. The assumption of human fragility had been challenged, but the full implications were still being processed. Torvik approached Captain Vasquez as she prepared to leave. Captain, I must ask, are all humans truly like this? The ability to heal from such damage? All healthy humans, Vasquez confirmed. Children heal even faster than adults. Elderly people heal slower, but they still heal. It's universal to our species. Torvik's crystalline form pulsed with an emotion Vasquez couldn't quite read. Then Earth must have been a terrible place to evolve. It was home, Vasquez replied simply. and it made us who we are. That night, in the human quarters, the crew gathered to discuss the day's events. Chen sat with his injured leg propped up, already able to move around with crutches. "Think they understand yet?" he asked. Dr. Okonkwo shook her head. "They're beginning to, but truly understanding human resilience takes time. They've never encountered a species quite like us." "Well," Park said with a slight smile, "tomorrow they get to watch me bleed. That should be educational." Captain Vasquez looked at her crew, feeling a surge of pride. They were far from home, surrounded by aliens who found them incomprehensible, but they were handling it with grace, patience, and the fundamental human trait that had carried their species across Earth and now into the stars. They endured. They healed. They continued. It was, after all, what humans did best. The medical demonstration room was packed with observers. Scientists from 17 different species crowded around the sterile chamber where Lieutenant James Park sat calmly on an examination table. Cameras from every angle recorded everything, broadcasting to the entire council and beyond. This wasn't just a medical procedure anymore. It had become a galactic event. Dr. Okonkwo prepared her instruments while explaining each step to the assembled scientists. "The incision will be made with a standard surgical scalpel," she said, holding up the small blade. 3 centimeters long, approximately 4 millimeters deep enough to cut through the dermis and into subcutaneous tissue, causing bleeding, but not deep enough to damage major blood vessels or nerves. Park rolled up his sleeve, exposing his forearm. His expression was relaxed, almost bored. Several alien observers moved closer to the transparent barrier, their various sensory organs focused intently on his exposed skin. "Lieutenant Park," High Arbiter Zelnix's voice came through the speakers. "You understand this will cause you pain?" "Yes, ma'am," Park replied. "I've had worse injuries. I broke my collarbone playing soccer when I was 15. Hurt way more than this will." The casual mention of deliberately breaking bones during recreational activities caused a stir among the observers, but Zelnix continued. "And you consent to this procedure freely?" "I do," Park confirmed. "Let's show them what humans can do." Dr. Okonkwo cleaned the area with antiseptic, then carefully made the incision. Park winced slightly, but didn't move. Blood immediately welled up from the cut, running down his arm in thin red streams. The alien observers watched in silence. For many of them, seeing blood was disturbing, a sign of imminent death. But the humans in the room remained calm. "Note the immediate response," Okonkwo narrated, as if teaching a class. "Blood is flowing from the wound, but watch carefully. Within seconds, the clotting process will begin." She was right. Even as she spoke, the blood flow began to slow. A Thoraxian biologist leaned closer to his monitor, watching the cellular-level imagery. "Impossible," he muttered. "The blood is solidifying on its own." "Platelets," Okonkwo explained, showing microscopic images on the holographic display. "These cell fragments circulate in human blood constantly. When they detect damage to blood vessels, they clump together and form a plug. Then proteins in the blood plasma create fibrin strands that weave through the platelet plug, forming a stable clot. Within 3 minutes, the bleeding had stopped almost completely. A dark red clot covered the incision, sealing it like natural glue. This is the first stage of healing, Okonkwo continued. The wound is now closed to prevent further blood loss and to keep out foreign contaminants. Park's immune system is already responding, sending white blood cells to the area to fight any bacteria that may have entered. A Pelgrothi medical scientist made a gurgling sound of amazement. Doctor, this clotting response? It happens automatically? The patient requires no medical intervention? For a wound this size, none at all, Okonkwo confirmed. Park's body will handle everything from here. We could apply a bandage to keep the wound clean, but even that isn't strictly necessary for healing to occur. How long until he recovers? Asked Commander Vraxis. His warrior's interest clearly piqued. The wound should close within a week, Okonkwo replied. Complete healing with minimal scarring will take about 2 weeks. Full strength in the tissue will return within 4 to 6 weeks as the collagen remodels. The observers watched as Park was moved to a recovery room where he would stay for the next 2 weeks. Sensors surrounded him, monitoring every aspect of the wound's progression. Tissue scanners provided real-time images of cellular activity. Every hour, samples would be taken for analysis. Over the next days, scientists from across the galaxy watched the healing process with obsessive fascination. A dedicated channel was set up to broadcast the wound's progress continuously. On day 2, the wound had developed a scab. The dried blood and plasma formed a hard protective covering. Underneath, invisible to the naked eye, millions of cells were working. Fibroblasts migrated into the wound area, laying down new collagen. Capillaries began growing, forming new blood vessels to supply the healing tissue. Dr. Okonkwo gave daily briefings to explain what was happening. The inflammatory phase is complete, she explained on day 3. Park's immune system has cleared any dead cells and potential pathogens. Now we're in the proliferative phase, where new tissue is being built. A young Vrin scientist asked, "The immune system you mentioned, it can distinguish between the body's own cells and foreign material?" "Yes, with remarkable accuracy," Okonkwo replied. "Human immune cells can identify thousands of different pathogens and remember them for years or even decades. If Park is exposed to the same bacteria again in the future, his immune system will respond even faster." Faster than it's responding now? The scientist's fears pulsed with disbelief. But the response we're observing is already extraordinarily rapid. "This is actually a moderate response," Okonkwo said with a slight smile. "For a serious infection, the immune system can mobilize far more aggressively. Fever, increased white blood cell production, targeted antibody manufacturing. The human body has an entire arsenal of defensive capabilities." By day 5, the scab was beginning to fall away at the edges. New pink skin was visible underneath, slightly different in texture from the surrounding tissue, but clearly formed and functional. Park gave an interview to the Galactic press, still sitting in his observation room. "Honestly," he told a journalist from the Kelthar Empire, "I keep forgetting I'm supposed to be injured. It itches a little, but that's about it. I've been reading, exercising, playing games. Just normal stuff." "But you are wounded," the journalist insisted. "You should be in distress." "It's just a cut," Park shrugged. "Everyone gets cuts. They heal. It's not a big deal." This casual dismissal of what the aliens considered a significant injury became a major talking point. Humans didn't just heal quickly, they didn't seem particularly concerned about injuries that would be life-altering for other species. Ambassador Torvik requested a private meeting with Captain Vasquez and Dr. Okonkwo. They met in a quiet conference room, away from the constant observation. "I've been reviewing Earth's history," Torvik began, his crystalline form glowing dimly in the low light. "Specifically, your medical records and historical accounts of human conflicts and exploration. What I've found is disturbing." "Disturbing how?" Vasquez asked carefully. Torvik pulled up a holographic display showing historical data. "Your species has survived catastrophic injuries throughout your history. Soldiers who continued fighting with multiple wounds. Explorers who survived weeks in hostile environments with broken bones. Sailors who recovered from diseases that killed other species. And this is considered normal?" "Well, we try to avoid injuries when possible," Okonkwo said. "But yes, humans have always been resilient. Our history is full of people surviving things they probably shouldn't have." "I found an account," Torvik continued, "of a human named Julianne Kopke who fell from a flying aircraft at over 3,000 meters altitude. She survived the fall and then walked through jungle for 11 days with a broken collarbone, gashed leg, and concussion. 11 days. Then she recovered and continued her life." "The Lanza Flight 508 incident," Okonkwo nodded. "Yes, that's a famous case. She was 17 years old at the time. The fall was broken by trees and her seat, which helped, but it was still an incredible survival story. Torvik's glow intensified. Do you understand what that means to us? A fall from that height would shatter a Corinthian beyond any hope of survival. The jungle environment alone would be fatal to most species. Yet a human child survived, healed, and lived for decades afterward. She was very lucky, Vasquez said quietly. Most people wouldn't survive something like that. But some do, Torvik pressed. That's the point. It's possible for humans. Not common, but possible. Your species has a survival range that encompasses scenarios that would be absolutely impossible for others. He pulled up more data, showing human survival in extreme conditions. Antarctica expeditions where explorers survived with severe frostbite. Desert survival stories where people endured without water for days. Mountain climbing accidents where the injured climbed down to safety themselves. Your planet trained you for survival, Torvik said. Every system in your body is designed to keep you alive under conditions that would kill almost any other sentient species. And you consider this normal. Because for us, it is normal, Okonkwo replied. Ambassador, every species considers their own capabilities normal. You think it's normal to have an unbreakable crystalline body. We think it's normal to heal from damage. These are just the traits our environments shaped. But the implications, Torvik said, his voice carrying a note of something like fear. In a galactic context, these traits make humans uniquely dangerous. Vasquez stiffened. Dangerous? We came here in peace, Ambassador. I don't question your intentions, Torvik said quickly, but consider a conflict scenario, which I hope never occurs. Most species commit warriors knowing that serious injury means withdrawal from combat, permanent damage, death. This limits the intensity and duration of conflicts. He paused, his crystalline structure flickering. But humans can sustain severe damage and return to fight. Your soldiers can recover from wounds that would permanently disable warriors from other species. A human military force isn't depleted by casualties the same way other forces are. You can sustain losses and regenerate your fighting capability. We prefer not to fight at all, Vasquez said firmly. That's why we're here, seeking peaceful cooperation. I know, Torvik said, and I'm grateful for that. But the Council's military advisors are already running simulations. Commander Vraxis told me this morning that humans represent a tactical challenge unlike anything in galactic history. Not because you're aggressive, but because you're so difficult to stop once committed to an objective. Dr. Okonkwo looked troubled. We didn't come here to intimidate anyone. We just wanted to join the galactic community. And you will, Torvik assured them. But the Council must understand what humanity represents. You're not just another species with interesting technology or unusual culture. You're a species that fundamentally challenges our understanding of limitations. On day 7, Park's wound was nearly healed. The scab had fallen off completely, revealing new skin that was slightly pink, but otherwise normal. He could use his arm without restriction, though the area was still tender to the touch. The xenobiologist Catherine of the Pelgrathi requested permission to present her findings to the full council. She had spent weeks analyzing human evolution, comparing it to other species, and developing a comprehensive theory. The council gathered once more, and Catherine floated in her water-filled suit to the central platform. Her species communicated through color changes in their bioluminescent skin, which translators rendered into words. Honored Council, she began, I have completed my analysis of human evolutionary history. My conclusions are both fascinating and deeply troubling. She displayed an image of Earth from space, beautiful and blue. Humans call their world by a simple name, Earth. But by galactic standards, Earth is what we classify as a Class 7 death world. The chamber filled with surprised murmurs. Class 7 was nearly the highest danger rating in the galactic classification system. Earth has extreme climate variability, Catherine continued. Temperature swings of over 100 degrees between seasons in some regions. Violent weather patterns including hurricanes, tornadoes, and blizzards. Tectonic instability causing earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. And perhaps most significantly, an incredibly diverse and aggressive biological ecosystem. She showed images of Earth's predators, lions, bears, crocodiles, sharks, then insects and parasites, then microscopic images of bacteria and viruses. Humans evolved in an environment where threats existed at every scale, Catherine explained. Large predators that could kill with claws and teeth, small parasites that could infiltrate the body, microscopic pathogens that could cause system-wide infection. Earth didn't just challenge human survival, it demanded constant adaptation to survive. She pulled up evolutionary diagrams. Most intelligent species evolved on stable worlds where natural selection favored specific advantageous traits. Strong armor, or speed, or size, or venom. Humans had none of these. Instead, they developed something more fundamental, the ability to endure and recover. Their healing capability isn't a unique trait, Catherine said. It's part of a comprehensive survival system. Rapid healing, redundant organs, strong immune responses, efficient temperature regulation, and remarkable psychological resilience. Humans are designed, by evolution, to survive conditions that would kill other species. She displayed data comparing human capabilities to other council species. The differences were stark. Humans could survive in wider temperature ranges, tolerate more radiation, process more toxins, recover from more severe injuries, and adapt to more varied environments than almost any other spacefaring species. My conclusion, Catherine said, her bioluminescence pulsing with emphasis, is that humans didn't just survive their death world. They thrived on it. They conquered it. They went from prey to apex predator through sheer persistence and adaptability. Commander Vraxis spoke up. Xenobiologist Catherine, you're suggesting humans are predators? Omnivorous persistence hunters, Catherine corrected. Ancient humans would chase prey for hours, or even days, until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. They couldn't outrun their prey, but they could outlast it. This strategy required incredible endurance and the ability to keep moving despite fatigue and minor injuries. She showed historical images of human hunters, tracking animals across vast distances. Even injured, humans continued. Even exhausted, they persisted. This psychological trait, combined with physical regeneration, created a species that simply doesn't stop. The implications hung heavy in the chamber. Humanity wasn't fragile after all. They were something far more concerning. Unstoppable. 3 months had passed since humanity's application to the Galactic Council. The Great Hall was filled once again, but the atmosphere had changed completely. Where there had been casual dismissal before, now there was careful attention. Where there had been pity for the fragile newcomers, now there was something closer to respect, or perhaps wariness. David Chen stood in the observation gallery, his weight evenly balanced on both legs. He'd been cleared for full duty 2 weeks earlier, after demonstrating complete recovery from injuries that should have crippled him for life. He still marveled at how the aliens stared at him when he walked past, as if witnessing something impossible. Ambassador Torvik called the council to order. His crystalline form glowed brighter than usual, and his voice carried a weight that demanded attention. Honored members, we convene today for the final classification vote regarding humanity. Much has changed since our initial assessment. He gestured and holographic displays activated throughout the chamber. 3 months ago, we classified humans as fragile, requiring protection from the dangers of galactic civilization. Today, we must reconsider everything we thought we understood about biological resilience. The displays showed data compilations, Chen's recovery timeline, Park's healing demonstration, comparative analyses of human versus alien durability, and projections of human capabilities in various scenarios. High Arbiter Zelnick spoke, her 17 spheres pulsing with measured rhythm. The evidence before us is clear. Humans possess regenerative capabilities that exceed any known spacefaring species. However, this presents the Council with an unprecedented decision. How do we classify a species that is simultaneously vulnerable to injury, yet capable of complete recovery? A heated debate began immediately. The Thoraxians argued that physical resilience should be measured by resistance to damage, not recovery from it. The Pelgrothi countered that functional longevity was more important than momentary invulnerability. The Kelthar military faction wanted humans classified as a potential military asset, which the diplomatic corps found deeply troubling. Commander Vraxis stood, his 6 arms gesturing for attention. I must speak plainly. My tactical analysts have spent months studying human capabilities. Our conclusions are disturbing from a military standpoint. He pulled up combat simulations. In any prolonged conflict, human forces would have a decisive advantage. Wounded soldiers who return to duty, populations that survive attacks other species would find devastating. The ability to operate in hostile environments that would kill our own troops. Humans aren't just resilient, they're strategically persistent. I fought in the Kelthar-Vryn border conflicts, Vraxis continued, his voice heavy with experience. I know what war costs. Every wounded warrior we lost was gone permanently, their families forever diminished. But humans can lose warriors to terrible injuries and, given time, have those same individuals return to service. This changes everything about military calculations. Captain Vasquez stood up in the human delegation section, her expression carefully controlled. Commander, with respect, we didn't come here to be your military asset or your military threat. We came seeking peaceful cooperation. I know, Vraxis said, meeting her gaze, and I'm not suggesting hostility. I'm merely stating facts that the Council must consider. Your species' capabilities have tactical implications, whether you intend them or not. A Vryn philosopher spoke up, her aged spheres dimming with contemplation. Perhaps we're approaching this incorrectly. We're trying to fit humanity into existing categories when they represent something entirely new. They're not fragile in the way we defined it, but neither are they durable in traditional terms. They're something else. Adaptive, suggested a Pelgrothi scientist. Humans are adaptive organisms with regenerative capabilities. Persistent, offered a Thoraxian. They can be damaged but continue functioning. The debate continued for hours, with various species proposing different classifications. Nothing seemed quite right. Humans defied easy categorization because they didn't fit the assumptions built into the galactic classification system. Finally, Ambassador Torvik called for order. Perhaps we need to hear directly from humanity about how they view themselves. Captain Vasquez, would you be willing to address the Council? Vasquez nodded and walked to the central platform. She stood alone under the lights, surrounded by thousands of alien observers, and took a moment to collect her thoughts. Honored Council members, she began, I've listened to your debates about human classification. I understand your concerns about our healing abilities, our persistence, our capacity to operate in dangerous environments. But I think you're missing something important about who we are. She gestured to the holographic display, calling up images of Earth. Not the dangerous predators or violent storms, but something else. Cities built on coastlines despite hurricanes. Agricultural settlements in earthquake zones. People living full lives in places where the environment constantly threatened them. Yes, Earth is a dangerous world, Vasquez said. Yes, we evolved to survive that danger. But we didn't just survive, we built civilizations. We created art and music and literature. We developed philosophy and science and medicine. We reach for the stars not because we're unstoppable warriors, but because we're explorers who refuse to be limited by our circumstances. She pulled up images of human achievements. the first moon landing, the Mars colonies, deep space probes, medical advances, artistic masterpieces. Our healing ability isn't a weapon, Vasquez continued. It's a second chance. Every human who's ever recovered from injury gets another opportunity to contribute, to create, to live. We don't heal quickly because we're built for war. We heal quickly because life is precious, and our evolution gave us the tools to hold on to it. She looked around at the assembled delegates. You're worried about what humans can endure, what we can survive, what threats we might pose. But you should also consider what we can contribute. We're persistent, yes, but that persistence means we don't give up on problems. We keep working until we find solutions. We're adaptable, which means we can help in situations where specialists can't function. Earth taught us that setbacks are temporary, Vasquez said quietly. That breaking isn't the same as being broken. That survival is about continuing, not about never falling down. These aren't the traits of conquerors. They're the traits of people who've learned to live with hardship and still choose hope. The council chamber was silent. Even the skeptics seemed moved by her words. Then alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed red. A computerized voice announced in multiple languages, "Toxic gas leak in Sector 7. All personnel evacuate immediately. Atmosphere containment failure in progress." The council chamber erupted in controlled chaos. Delegates began moving toward exits, following evacuation protocols. Station security began coordinating the response, sealing bulkheads to contain the leak. Captain Vasquez immediately accessed her communication device, connecting with her crew. "Dr. Okonkwo, what's the situation?" "Checking now," Okonkwo's voice came back. "It's a chlorine gas leak, Captain. Concentration is already at dangerous levels in Sector 7. Multiple alien crew members are trapped in that section, unable to reach escape routes due to collapsed corridors from a structural failure." Vasquez made a decision in seconds. "How dangerous is chlorine to humans?" "Dangerous," Okonkwo admitted. "It'll cause respiratory damage, eye irritation, potential lung tissue scarring, but our lungs can regenerate from chemical damage if exposure isn't too prolonged. Other species don't have that capability. For them, this level of exposure would be immediately fatal." "Understood," Vasquez said. She turned to Ambassador Torvik. "Request permission to send human crew into the affected area for rescue operations." Torvik's crystalline form flickered with alarm. "Captain, the area is contaminated. You'll be injured, possibly killed." "Possibly injured," Vasquez corrected. "And then we'll heal. But those trapped aliens will definitely die if we don't help them. That's not acceptable." She didn't wait for official permission. She was already running toward her crew quarters, her communication device active. "All human crew, this is Captain Vasquez. We have aliens trapped in a toxic gas leak. I need volunteers for rescue operations. Be aware, you will sustain respiratory injuries. You will be in pain, but you will survive and recover." The response was immediate. Every human crew member volunteered. Within 10 minutes, the human team had assembled. They wore basic protective equipment, not the full hazmat suits other species would require, because such suits weren't available in sufficient quantities. Dr. Okonkwo distributed medication that would help protect their lungs and enhance their body's natural defenses. "This is going to hurt," she warned them. "You'll cough, your eyes will burn, your lungs will feel like they're on fire. But I'll be monitoring all of you remotely. If anyone's exposure becomes life-threatening, I'll order immediate evacuation." "Understood, Doc," Chen said, checking his breathing mask. "It would provide some protection, but not complete. Let's go save some lives." The human team entered Sector 7 through a maintenance corridor. The chlorine gas was visible as a yellow-green haze, caustic and burning. Despite their protective measures, the humans immediately felt the effects. Eyes watered, throats burned, breathing became difficult. But they continued. Using thermal scanners, they located the trapped aliens. 3 Pelgrathi in their water suits, damaged and leaking. 2 Thoraxians, their silicon-based bodies already corroding from the chemical exposure. 1 young Vryn, separated from her collective and in danger of consciousness dissolution. The rescue operation took 47 minutes. The humans worked methodically, cutting through debris, stabilizing the injured aliens, and carrying them to safety. They communicated through hand signals when talking became too painful. They supported each other when someone stumbled from dizziness. They persisted when every breath felt like inhaling fire. Finally, the last alien was evacuated. The human team emerged from Sector 7, their faces red and blistered, coughing violently, eyes swollen and streaming tears. Medical teams rushed to attend to them, but the humans first made sure all the rescued aliens were receiving treatment. The entire council had watched the rescue through security cameras. They'd seen humans voluntarily enter an environment that would have killed any of them, sustain injury after injury, and continue working until everyone was safe. Dr. Okonkwo treated her crew members with efficiency born of practice. Lung irrigation, she ordered, oxygen therapy, steroid treatments to reduce inflammation. You'll all be fine in a few days, a week at most. See, Chen said to Ambassador Torvik, who had insisted on observing. His voice was hoarse and painful sounding, but he managed a smile. Just another day for humans. Torvik's crystalline body pulsed with emotion. You saved 6 lives today, at great cost to yourselves. Temporary cost, Chen corrected, coughing. We'll heal. They couldn't have. Simple math. 2 days later, the Galactic Council reconvened for the final vote. The human crew members were present, most of them still recovering, but already showing improvement. The rescued aliens were there too, alive because humans had been willing to sacrifice their own health. High Arbiter Zelnix called for order. The vote before us is clear. However, the question has changed. We're no longer simply classifying humanity. We're determining what role they will play in our galactic community. She paused, her 17 spheres aligned in perfect formation. The humans have demonstrated capabilities that make them uniquely qualified for operations others cannot survive. They have also demonstrated a willingness to use those capabilities for the benefit of others, even at cost to themselves. Therefore, Zelnix continued, I propose a new classification, one that has never existed in Council history. I propose we designate humanity as a critical response species, authorized to participate in rescue operations, hazardous missions, and emergency situations where other species cannot function. Furthermore, I propose full Council membership, not as a protectorate, but as equal partners. The vote was called. Species after species affirmed. Even Commander Vraxis and the Kelthar military faction voted in favor, though they added a note requesting defensive alliances with humanity rather than opposition to them. The vote was unanimous. Humanity was accepted as full Council members with special designation. Captain Vasquez stood to accept on behalf of her species. Her voice was steady, despite the emotion she felt. The humans of Earth accept this honor and responsibility. We promise to serve the Council with the same persistence and dedication that our world taught us. We will not break, and when we do, we will heal and continue. Ambassador Torvik approached her as the ceremony concluded. His crystalline form glowed with a warm light. Captain, I must confess something. When I first saw your species, I thought you were fragile. I thought you needed our protection. And now? Vasquez asked. Now I understand, Torvik said. You don't need our protection. Perhaps we need yours. You have taught us that strength isn't about never breaking. It's about getting back up after you fall. Vasquez smiled. Ambassador, there's a word we use on Earth for that quality. We call it resilience. And it's not just about healing from injuries. It's about maintaining hope despite hardship. It's about continuing when others would quit. It's about surviving and then choosing to thrive anyway. She looked out at the assembled council members, representing dozens of species from across the galaxy. Earth broke us over and over. Evolution taught us to heal, but we taught ourselves something more important. We learned that being broken isn't the end of the story. It's just another chapter. As the Perseverance prepared to depart, carrying news of humanity's acceptance back to Earth, the Council watched with newfound understanding. They had called humans fragile, and in some ways they were right. Human bodies could be damaged easily compared to many species. But they'd learned something crucial. Fragility isn't weakness when paired with the refusal to stay broken. The galaxy had accepted humanity not despite their capacity for injury, but because of their capacity for recovery. Not because they couldn't be stopped, but because stopping them was only ever temporary. Humans would break, they would bleed, they would be knocked down by the challenges of galactic civilization, just as they'd been knocked down by the challenges of Earth. But they would heal, they would rise, they would continue, because that was what humans did. That was what Earth had taught them. And the galaxy would learn to respect not humanity's invulnerability, but something far more powerful, their absolute refusal to accept defeat as permanent. In the end, the greatest strength wasn't the ability to never break. It was the courage to break and heal and continue anyway, again and again, for as long as necessary. The humans called it resilience. The galaxy was only beginning to understand what that truly meant.